everybody. I'm Nicola Casale, VP here at Yellow Goat Design, and thanks for tuning in to our design story. Today, I'm joined by Scott Hierlinger, VP of Interior Design, and Matt Grynol, Senior Interior Designer of Nelson in Minneapolis. Hi, guys. Great to see you.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Thanks for joining. I'm so excited to talk about our recent collaboration on the 222 project. It's an office skyscraper in downtown Minneapolis and developed by Lingerfelt. Scott, have you worked with this developer before, and what was the ultimate goal for this project?
We have not worked with this developer before, but this building has a long history with both Matt and myself.
Oh, okay.
It had many iterations of almost happening with a lot of different owners. So literally, this was probably 4 to 5 years in the making. But everyone said, you guys know this building better than anyone. Well, we had 5 years to do this, right? So we really worked on what this really strategy was going to be for this building, what it should be, what it shouldn't be. It had been just a multi-tenant office building. It had gone through a renovation in the, if I'm not mistaken, it was the late 80s, early 90s. And as you can imagine, at this point, it had gotten extremely tired and it wasn't following at all what you call an amenity-rich building, compelling to the real estate community. With so many of other buildings already have gone kind of that extra mile, this building had to commit. And luckily, Lingerfelt Commonwealth, they were in from day one and they believed in the vision and they really understood that it needed a new makeup of what was retail. It needed to add the amenities that it needed to add. And it really needed to kind of bring security to the forefront for the tenants. And also just needed to have a pop of like just amazing life.
That makes perfect sense. And over to you, Matt. What was the design concept behind the reposition of this building? I did some research and noticed the website uses the term workplace evolved. Can you describe that in more detail?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, as Scott mentioned, for all the years we put into it, we got to see trends evolve with it, right? And things that we did, the first few years, we looked at it, a couple years later and be like, gosh, we're glad we didn't commit to some of those things because they changed so quickly. Yeah. And with the advent of technology and all of these new ways that people are working and thinking, we're like, well, for us to set this building apart in the market, we really have to do a couple things. One, we have to kind of present a way that the building functions that supports a group that's looking for something different. And we have to also do something that has this elevated feeling beyond their competitors. And so Evolved really encompassed all these ideas together. We started collectively with the ownership group and even the leasing group from Cushman & Wakefield to come up with these ideas that really create the foundation for the design. And we built those off of it being smart, sophisticated, technology, and the idea too of fluidity. And the fluidity really came through the idea that the way the building functioned currently was confusing. And it offered for anybody coming into the building this point where they were so confused that you have this terrible experience when you enter the building and you don't know where to go. And then as you have two entrances, as Scott mentioned, one from the Skyway and one from the sort of main street level, if you have a point where you're disoriented within the building, it's not going to want to draw people to the building.
And that sort of brings us to the grand stair and the entry moment where the Yellow Goat sculpture and light fixture is installed. Scott, what was the design concept behind this, and where did it really originate, and how did you know what you wanted to do here?
Well, it started with the atrium, and the atrium used to have escalators, and that was very much an 80s thing. And every building had escalators. And really in Minneapolis, I don't know if this is really everywhere around the country, but in Minneapolis, escalators are kind of looked at like, you can't keep that. Being able to get rid of those very clunky escalators, which really dominated the entire atrium, it opened it up into a lot of opportunity on the one side. And on the other side, we wanted to be able to bring people into the building and have a lot more of a grand entrance, a lot more of a powerful statement rather than just stairs. So that's where we came up with the curvilineal staircase that really connects the two floors. But we had the path of travel was extremely important. We looked at the different ways that the travel really should flow in the building versus how it was flowing. And we pulled it to the side intentionally, which that stair automatically draws you in and tells you where you're supposed to go. So this was a kind of a wayfinding technique as well as just a grand design statement. I'm going to let Matt talk about the light fixture design, because really Matt was really owned that whole idea. And really what it came from was when we had this great uninterrupted space, what do we do with it?
Right. The fixture itself is almost built from 150 aluminum tubes, and it has this really cool cutout design. Matt, tell me about that detail and how did you come up with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The fixture in itself had kind of two sides to it. One was, fulfilling a need to create some volume within the atrium space. And the other was to represent a very sophisticated kind of metaphor to the design. But we didn't want to do something so large it blocked views. So that's where all of those light fixtures as kind of these stem pieces worked quite well, because inherently, collectively as them together, create a volume as itself. Now, the metaphor for this that relates to the design was the idea that the building is very boxy. It's a square with a inner square core that's actually 45 degrees. And so when we're talking about fluidity of space and curves, that was really a fight against the architecture, because the architecture in itself, if you work with it, creates some weird triangle spaces that we want to avoid. So if we were to take this square shape and cut through it with curves and fluid, you get these void forms, which inherently is what we have in the design of these kind of circulation paths. And that both creates a lighter representation of the sculpture itself and the light fixture, and also it just makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah.
The other piece to it as well was this constellation, which is the light. We created, to not have too linear of approach throughout the space, we created throughout the second floor all the recessed light fixtures. There's hundreds of them in a very randomized pattern, similar to like a constellation. So when you look at this light fixture itself, there's this constellation aspect of twinkling and really interesting kind of, visual movement with it. And then we worked with the Yellow Goat team to come up with a finish choice. And originally we were going to do it all as brass. And we struggled to find the right material for using in the building, because it has a lot of chrome, it has aluminum, it has stainless steel, it's got it all. So either we chose to work with it or fight against it. And we said, let's work with it. And we celebrated the multi-use of all these metals in a kind of jewel-esque representation of them coming together within the light fixture, along with that constellation aspect of the lights, resembling the second floor as well.
Use a fixture like this. You want people to notice, but that's not all you want them to notice. You want people to like go, that is awesome. Look how that, and right, but you don't pick it up the first second. You look and you're like, oh, that's a great layering of product, right? It's not just, wow, look at the light fixture and then go, that just really, does that go in here, right? Architects and designers do that all the time. They walk in going, well, they obviously love that light fixture, but it doesn't work. So we felt that this really, just the materials we could do, the way it was designed, a lot of Matt's ideas, the way you guys intricately created it really works in that space. I mean, it just feels like it should be there.
Was it exactly as you envisioned when it went up? We see the shop drawings, we see the renderings and the sketches, and then we see it in real time. Was it exactly as you had pictured in your mind?
It's funny you asked that, because when we created this, just sometimes when you're in a pinch and under the bind for deadlines, you create something to, resemble a design intent, and you hope that it can be kept in the project. But we talked about earlier on, be like, we've got one. Is one enough? God, the space needs two. They'll take one out. No big deal. We'll get one. And when the ownership group was in love with the design so much that they're willing to commit to two, we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to go forward. And so I think from our end, we were really amazed to see that the building ownership group both trusted and appreciated what we were trying to accomplish with the design. And we felt that, if you were to remove them out, it's one of them out of the space, or have to take them back altogether, we would really be struggling to create the impression we wanted for that front, first impression walking into the building. That being said, I think it was executed extraordinarily well. And I think that was both in part with what our team was trying to create from a concept standpoint to how, Yellow Goat translated it. We created this 3D model and, represented in this very well articulated design model with, a level of detail that we felt was sufficient. And then as we translate it to your team, they did a phenomenal job by creating visuals and renderings and bring it to life. And refining the assemblies to make sure that we get every component we want, between how the light fixtures work, how the cutouts work, how it's suspended. In the end, it was the paired partnership of our team with your team, and even to the extent of the finish that came to the canopy and how it's going to be built and assembled on site with the general contractor, we felt was an extraordinarily well accomplished process. And we're very proud of the fact that we had the right partners to work with in this.
I would say, I mean, I just think you guys are very capable of understanding the design intent and actually understanding how to really create it, but then disassemble it. The installation instructions are, this is being put up by people who have no idea what this is supposed to be, right? So being that, you know, we saw the parts and pieces on the floor and we're like, yowza, right? You know, they're going to put this together, right? And they did, and it was we talked to them and they were like, oh no, it was very easy to understand. These guys do a great job. We've worked with them before. And we've actually used you guys in another building across town that's being installed, I think maybe this month later. It's very long, yeah. So, but it just is nice when you know that when both parts of a design are very competent and one understands what the design vision is and the other one understands how to create the vision. That's what's great. And it makes it really easy to work together because you're not, getting into frustration land going, I don't think they're following me. They're doing what they want. They weren't doing what we asked, that whole thing. So it was really kind of, nothing's ever easy, but this was as easy as it could be.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And we really appreciate all the level of detail you put into it as well. Like you said, it's definitely a two-way street, and having a really strong design concept from the beginning is helpful for us so we can run with it. That's wonderful. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to share the design behind 222. We're very excited to continue to collaborate on our next project. And to our viewers, thanks for tuning in.